I grew up in a family that was deeply involved in criminal activities. My childhood was far from normal, and it was marred by a great deal of trauma. Unfortunately, things only got worse when my entire family was killed, leaving me as the only survivor. I owe my life to a single police officer who took me under his wing and protected me during those dark days. His kindness and bravery left a deep impression on me and inspired me to become a police officer myself. I worked hard and graduated from the police academy when I was just 21 years old. As soon as I finished, I requested to be assigned to the Raccoon Police Department. The reason for my request was the bizarre murders that were taking place in and around the Arklay Mountains. I was determined to do my part in protecting the people of Raccoon City from the dangers that lurked in the shadows. When I arrived in Raccoon City, I had no plans for where to stay or how to get around. I had broken up with my girlfriend in the hasty departure and was feeling lost and hungover from heavy drinking the night before. I was late for my first day at the station, and my journey to Raccoon City was already complicated by a confusing phone call urging me not to come into work. As I stopped at the Mazoil gas station just outside the city to fill up on gas, I heard a crash inside and went to investigate. To my horror, I found a zombie eating a police officer. I fled the station and ran into Claire Redfield outside. We quickly hijacked an Arklay County Sheriff's Department patrol car, hoping to escape the danger. Unfortunately, our escape was short-lived when a gasoline tanker collided with our car, destroying it. Claire and I were separated, and I continued on to the police station independently. When I arrived, I found that the station had already fallen to zombies. The only unzombified police officers left were the injured Lieutenant Marvin Branagh, Elliot Edward, and Police Chief Brian Irons. I tried to help Elliot through an emergency shutter door, but the zombies severed his torso, and he died shortly after. Lieutenant Marvin Branagh rescued me, and I was briefed on the situation. Elliot had found a secret passageway that could lead out of the station, and it was up to me to find it and escape the horrors that awaited me. Upon arrival, I discovered that the station had already fallen to zombies, and the only living police officers were Lieutenant Marvin Branagh, Elliot Edward, and Police Chief Brian Irons. I tried to save Elliot, but unfortunately, the zombies had already severed his torso before I could pull him through an emergency shutter door. After being rescued by Marvin Branagh, I was told about Elliot's discovery of a secret passageway that could lead out of the station. It wasn't long before I found myself entering the passageway underneath the station, where I encountered Dr. William Birkin, who ultimately fell into an abyss after I defeated him. In the police station's basement, I met Ada Wong, a corporate spy from one of Umbrella's rival companies who had been sent to steal the G virus. To maintain her cover, she claimed to be an FBI agent looking for evidence of Umbrella USA's illegal bioweapons project. During our mission, we learned of Ben Bertolucci, a freelance journalist who had uncovered vital information for our mission. Unfortunately, he was killed by the T-00 bioorganic weapon sent to eliminate the station's survivors. Ada and I eventually made our way to the city's sewers, where we found transport to Nest, Umbrella's laboratory dedicated to G-virus research. While exploring the laboratory, I realized that Ada's true mission was to steal the G-virus for her company, as Annette Birkin revealed that she was a mercenary. After cornering her, Ada fell off a shaft but successfully escaped the facility before it self-destructed without the G-virus sample. As I fled to Nest's bottom platform, I was reunited with Claire and the young Sherry Birkin, who had been infected with G-virus. Thanks to Devil, Sherry's mutations were halted after she received a vaccination. We barely escaped as the facility was destroyed, and Dr. William Birkin perished soon after. After the Raccoon City incident, Claire and I split up, and she continued her search for Chris, while I looked after Sherry. However, we were soon apprehended by the U.S. military. Sherry was taken away and placed in protective custody, while I was interrogated by Adam Benford. I was cautious and never mentioned Claire or Wong. However, the government was interested in recruiting me because of my experience, and I accepted the offer mainly to ensure Sherry was kept in good hands and safe from experimentation because of her G antibodies. When I first joined the police force, I was just a rookie trying to do my job. But after I was recruited as a government agent, my training transformed me into an expert special agent. I became proficient in weapons handling and close-quarters combat, which prepared me for the challenges I would later face. In November of 1998, I sent my friend, Detective Ark Thompson, to investigate Umbrella's facilities on China Island. The following month, Claire went to Europe in search of her brother Chris. Unfortunately, she was caught trespassing in an Umbrella facility in Paris and was taken captive. It was while she was imprisoned on Rockford Island that Claire reached out to me for help. She sent me an email asking me to inform Chris of her location so that he could come to rescue her. I knew I had to act fast, so I personally tracked down Chris and informed him of the situation. Chris headed for Rockford Island to rescue Claire and take down Umbrella. In 2002, I was sent to a small South American country as part of a secret military detachment. This was before the Russian branch of Umbrella was destroyed. Our headquarters had received information that a former Umbrella researcher had contacted a man named Javier Hidalgo, and my partner Jack Krauser and I were sent to investigate. Our objective was to find Javier, a ruthless drug lord who had taken control of a large area of the jungle. The small government was powerless to stop him, and so we were deployed by the U.S. government. Our mission was to infiltrate the country and find out what was going on. We soon found ourselves in the midst of a T-virus outbreak and had to work together to survive. During this time, I also met a mysterious girl named Manuela. She was the only survivor of her village, and it was later revealed that she was Javier's daughter. She had contracted a rare disease and was being kept alive by her father through the T. Veronica virus. As Krauser and I explored Javier's compound, I opened up to him about my experiences during the hellish night in Raccoon City. I also shared Claire's encounter with the T. Veronica virus to help him understand how Umbrella's bioorganic weapons worked. It was a difficult mission, but Krauser and I were able to complete it successfully. 2 years later, I received reliable intel from the U.S. secret agency that Ashley Graham, codenamed Baby Eagle, the abducted daughter of the current President Graham, was last sighted in the region. I arrived at Valdelobos, a remote, mountainous village located in Spain, along with 2 local cops from Cuerpo Nacional de Policia who the chief sent to assist me with the search. Upon arriving at the remote location, Officer Castano excused himself into the forest. Finding that the officer had gone for an extended amount of time, I went outside to search for him while the other remained in the car. I set off after Castano's trail and stumbled upon the old and dilapidated hunter's lodge. Upon entering the lodge, I explored its surroundings and encountered the resident of the lodge, who acted in strange behavior. I asked the man in Spanish if he had seen the missing officer, but no answers were given. Looking around the room, I noticed the bloody badge of Officer Castano and was suddenly attacked by the seemingly crazed man. I managed to dodge and inadvertently broke his neck. I heard Officer Castano scream and followed the sound down the basement, where I discovered his mutilated corpse, as well as the radio-emitting requests for help from the other, before the signal broke up. In the basement, I heard a sudden crack coming from the upstairs and saw the villager, who approached me despite the broken neck, with tentacles now sprouting from his wounds, but I managed to kill the man. I made my way back to the main part of the lodge and discovered evidence that Ashley is being held in Lago, the lake part of Valdelobos. I informed my agency's support operative Ingrid Hunnigan of my discovery. Having found a lead, I escaped the pursuers and proceeded further into the village square, where I witnessed the ritualistic burning and execution by pyre of the remaining police officer by the villagers. I soon found myself quickly surrounded by the villagers of Valdelobos, including a crazed man who wore a sack as a mask and wielded a chainsaw but bought enough time until the church's bell rang, rendering the villagers docile and dropping their weapons before retreating back to the town hall. I stood outside, puzzled by the villagers' actions and left confused about what had just occurred. Shortly afterwards, Hunnigan contacted and informed me of a path to the lake by the large windmill and encountered the burnt house where I heard banging noise emitting from the cellar. Inside, I discovered a captured man writhing in a body bag and removed his restraints. I met a man named Luis Serra Navarro and attempted to rescue him until the chief of the local village named Bitors Mendez intercepted and disarmed me and threw me across the room, leaving me incapacitated. In my knocked-out state, Mendez approached and injected me with the egg of Las Plagas. I couldn't believe what was happening to me. I was incapacitated, and then I saw Osman Sadler, the cult leader, presenting me with their most sacred body. I didn't know what was going on, but then the process began, and everything became a blur. When I finally came to, I was in restraints alongside Luis, who told me that Ashley had been moved to the old chapel in another part of the village. But before we could talk more, a ganado came in and attacked us. Luis and I managed to lock the ganado in a strangulation position with our chains, and I pulled my chain hard enough to break its neck. After Luis freed himself, I followed him out of the room. Hunnigan contacted me, and I told her about Ashley's new location. I also asked her to look into Luis, who had a suspicious aura about him. As I made my way through the village, I found myself in the manor of the village chief, Mendez. I gained the key I needed to advance to the chapel, but Mendez stopped me. I tried to shoot him, but he showed no visible injury and proceeded to strangle me. I thought it was the end for me, but then I saw that my plaga parasite was advancing. Mendez claimed that his blood has accepted the gift and threw me across the room before an unseen woman outside the window shot him in the head. Mendez let me go, and I was left wondering what he meant by gifted. As I recovered from the attack, Hunnigan contacted me again and sent her a report regarding Luis. I was furious when I found out that Luis used to work for Umbrella. I should have left him to rot. As evening fell, I returned to the village square and found that the tower had been destroyed, blocking my path to the chapel. I ended up outside the church and discovered that the cult members had taken Ashley into the church to await Sadler's command. They had hidden the key on the other side of the Lake Lago to hinder my progress. I navigated my way around the lake, but the boat malfunctioned, and I was stranded in the middle of the lake. I battled with Del Lago, and even though I emerged victorious, I was left exhausted and coughing up blood. Once again, I began to see visions of Sadler infesting me with more parasites. The pain was excruciating, and I thought it would never end. But then I woke up where I was before. I piloted my boat back to the mainland where Hunnigan contacted me after 3 hours of radio silence. As night fell, I came across the corpses of the 2 missing hikers with bloody markings previously mentioned in the disappearance. I knew I had to find Ashley before it was too late. As I made my way back to the church, I had to fight another mutated creature, El Gigante. It was a tough battle, but I managed to take the creature down. When I finally arrived at the church, I discovered that Ashley's personal items were scattered around the area, which made me uneasy. When I approached her confinement room, Ashley tried to attack me with a candlestick. But I was able to disarm her and told her that I was there to rescue her. However, our escape plans were interrupted when we saw a horde of villagers of ganados coming for us, after seeing Sadler command them to deliver us to salvation. We were cautious as we approached them. Inside the church, Ashley was worried about how we were going to get out of the situation. But I reassured her and reminded her of her father's trust in me to bring her home safely. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed to trust me, and we made our way outside the church. Outside, we found ourselves surrounded by ganados, and it started to rain heavily. I contacted Hunnigan and informed her of our situation. She sent a chopper and gave us the coordinates for our extraction. Luis signaled to us to head inside the cabin, where we hid from the ganados. I was still angry at Luis for his record, so I confronted him and tried to interrogate him. But we were interrupted by the approaching ganados. We had Ashley away while I held down the fort against numerous hostiles. After a grueling onslaught, Ashley revealed an opening path, and the 3 of us fled from the premises. We had to shoot the chains off the wooden portcullis to cut off further pursuers. Hunnigan contacted me again, informing me that the helicopter couldn't reach us due to the worsening weather. She wanted to help us more, but I assured her that we would make it back safely. As we passed through a checkpoint area, we were ambushed by the village chief Mendez and pursued throughout the area. Our escape was hindered by other villagers, and we had to cross a narrow and fragile wooden passage alongside the cliff's edge. Ashley got her leg stuck in the wooden planks, and I had to cover for her by shooting the pursuing ganado. Unfortunately, the passage collapsed entirely, but we managed to make it to the other side. I watched as the village chief walked away, and we continued our pursuit to safety. So there I was, with Ashley, making our way through this old slaughterhouse when we get ambushed by the village chief. He tells us to submit to the cult's will, but I knew we had to fight. I urged Ashley to escape while I threw a fuel tank towards the chief, blowing it up. But that only made things worse, as he revealed his mutated form and we had to battle it out. In the end, I managed to survive the encounter with the village chief, but poor Mendez didn't make it. Ashley and I made our way outside, and she broke a nearby window for me to escape the burning building. I was grateful for her rescue, and we made our way to the castle. Once inside, Luis contacted me and offered a suppressant to slow down the parasite's progression. We agreed to meet in the castle's courtyard, but on the way, we met the castellan of the castle, Ramon Salazar. He demanded that Ashley be handed over to spread the parasite all over the world, but we refused. We fought our way through Salazar's armed men and finally reached the courtyard. That's when Ashley's symptoms started to worsen, and she fainted in my arms. But when she woke up, something wasn't right. It was like she was being controlled by someone else, and she tried to attack me with my own knife. I managed to dodge her attack, but before I could do anything, a gate separated us. Ashley realized what she had done and ran away from me. I was worried about Ashley and tried to contact Hunnigan for help, but the signal kept breaking up. I had to track her down through the castle, but then I ran into Ada again. It had been 6 years since we last saw each other, and I asked her about the organization she was working for. She didn't give me a straight answer, but she suggested that I abandon Ashley, who she thought was doomed. Of course, I couldn't do that. Ada suggested that we continue the conversation another time and escaped through the window. However, I lost the fight against him, and Luis managed to save me by shooting Krauser's knife away. Disappointed at Krauser's lack of change, he left the area. Luis was heavily injured and gave me the key to his lab where we could remove the parasites. He also told me that people can change before dying, and I regretfully watched him pass. I wanted to avenge Luis's death, so I went after Krauser and boarded the lift to the surface. Ada informed me that Ashley was being moved to the clock tower and that I still had time to save her. From the top, I saw Salazar escort Ashley inside the building and followed their trail. Salazar handed Ashley over to Krauser and reminded him to declare his loyalty to the cause. Before I could reach them, Krauser carried Ashley away with the drawbridge raised, and Salazar faced me. I had enough of his taunts, so I shot him in the chest and head. Salazar's mutated form faced me, and I had to navigate my way through the surrounding environment to try and kill him. He could only cry out for Sadler's help before succumbing to his injuries inflicted by me. I then saw Krauser piloting the boat with Ashley as its passenger and made haste towards the dock. Ada appeared with the key for the other boat, and we set off to follow Krauser. On the boat ride, I confided in Ada about how I have changed along with the world after the destruction of Raccoon City. I explained that saving one life often results in the deaths of hundreds more, and I asked Ada if she has changed as well or if she continues to use me for her own agenda, like she did 6 years ago. However, Ada gave me no answer and left me to pilot the boat to the docking point. At the rocky shores, I witnessed heavily reinforced entry and Krauser taking Ashley inside the base. Successfully infiltrating the base, I discovered that Ashley was being kept in a room that required a level access keycard. I acquired the necessary keycard and opened Ashley's cell. I saw that her symptoms were worsening by the minute, and I took the last suppressant, injecting Ashley with the serum and buying her some time. I sat by her side until she woke up, feeling exhausted but relieved that she was safe. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, Ashley finally wakes up and I tell her the news of Luis's death. Determined to avenge him, she swears to eliminate the parasites in their bodies. I reach out to Ada for help in finding Luis's laboratory, and she tells us that important facilities are typically located at the top of the summit. With our destination in mind, Ashley and I set out to make the ascent. As we climb, Ashley reminisces about our teamwork and shares her aspirations of becoming an agent like me. But I remind her that our top priority is still to escape. We eventually reach the amber storeroom, where Sadler and his followers reveal themselves. Sadler introduces himself as the spokesperson for the cult, and I respond by shooting him in the eye. But his injury quickly heals, and Sadler proceeds to take control of Ashley, ordering her to kill me. Ashley resists, managing to shoot and kill 2 of Sadler's followers, but her gun jams before she can take aim at me. Sadler and his remaining followers then whisk Ashley away. Under Sadler's control, I am left incapacitated. But once they are out of earshot, I break free and pursue Ashley. I encounter Krauser, who taunts me about my perceived failures and mocks me for my inability to save anyone. I retaliate, calling out his own reasons for working with the cult and how power is his ultimate goal. Our fight turns deadly as I push my way towards the tower where Ashley is being held. Just as I am about to reach her, the drawbridge rises, and Krauser appears behind me, his arms now mutated. We engage in a final battle, and I emerge victorious, leaving Krauser incapacitated. He tells me that his death is inevitable and instructs me to finish him off. I honor his request and stab him in the heart with his own knife. As he takes his last breath, Krauser tells me that he is proud of the training he gave me, and I acknowledge his compliment. I glance back regretfully at his body before heading into the tower. At the top of the building, I see Ashley being escorted by Sadler's followers into a heavily guarded sanctuary. As I make my way towards her, Mike arrives in a combat chopper sent by Hunnigan to assist me. But we are quickly surrounded by Novastators, which damage the vehicle and cause it to crash, killing Mike. Fueled by anger towards Sadler, I am more determined than ever to put an end to him. As I arrived at their sanctuary, my heart sank at the sight of Ashley lying unconscious at the stone altar. I immediately rushed towards her, but Sadler blocked my path and started talking about our bodies and thoughts being connected through the holy body. He convinced me to accept the gift, just like Ashley did. I was furious and longed at Sadler, but it was too late. The plaga progressed rapidly through my body, and I was almost under its control. Thankfully, Ada appeared just in time, firing bullets at Sadler and buying Ashley and me enough time to escape. With visions clouding my sight, I stumbled alongside Ashley towards Luis's laboratory, using the key entrusted by Luis to get inside. I went through the painful process of removing the parasite from Ashley, but I was happy that she was now safe from harm. The effort was too much for me, and I fainted on the floor. As I lay there incapacitated, Ashley moved me for parasite removal, freeing me from Sadler's control. Outside, Ada was being held captive, and I knew I had to save her. I left Ashley behind and headed towards Ada's location, fighting off swarms of Novastators and confronting Sadler in his mutated form. Ada saved me just in time, and we managed to defeat Sadler once and for all. In the aftermath, Ada picked up the amber, but I knew that our paths would diverge. She offered me a ride on the helicopter, but I refused, and she left the premises. Ashley arrived, and we made our way to the dock on a water scooter left behind by Ada. We navigated through the collapsing cave and burning facilities, witnessing the destruction of the island. As Ashley offered to put me under her protection detail, I refused, recognizing her strength and independence. We made our way home, with Hunnigan finally reaching contact with me. In the year after the Terragrigia panic in 2004, the threat of bioterrorism only grew. Former Umbrella researchers were selling bioweapons on the black market, requiring more and more extreme countermeasures. The U.S. government made a deal with WP Corporation to mass-produce a T vaccine that could neutralize Umbrella's lead viral weapon. In August 2005, an outbreak occurred in India after soldiers loyal to General Miguel Grande got their hands on the T virus. Thanks to WP Corporation's vaccine, the outbreak was contained. Later that year, a terrorist attack took place at Harvardville Airport, causing a riot and a plane crash. USAMRIID confirmed that a T-virus strain was responsible, and the 75th Ranger Regiment was deployed to eliminate the zombies. I was sent to oversee the operation due to my experience in fighting zombies. I led a police team into the airport to rescue 5 survivors ahead of the Ranger attack, including Senator Ron Davis and my old friend, Claire Redfield. While cleaning up the airport, I received new information from Ingrid Hunnigan that the FBI had arrested a soldier in General Grande's army in Los Angeles. Soon after, I received word of a planned bioweapons attack across the United States. When a WP Corporation truck exploded, I began investigating Dr. Curtis Miller, an opponent of the company. I drove up to his burnt-down house with Angela Miller, Dr. Miller's younger sister and an SRT member, to search for clues. We were then alerted to an explosion at WP Corporation's Air Dome laboratory and headed there. At the laboratory, Redfield was the only uninfected survivor, and Dr. Frederick Downing, the chief researcher, was believed to be dead in the bombing. Dr. Miller was infected with the Golgotha virus and wiped out the Ranger Squad. He then tried to hunt down his sister to propagate his new species. I was able to keep Angela safe and we escaped through an underground access way. Due to elaborate biohazard containment measures, Dr. Miller was killed in an explosion after falling down a shaft. After the attack, Redfield and I realized something was not right. Hunnigan reported that General Grande had revealed himself to be a courier taking the T virus, T vaccine, and G virus out of the country. Evidence implicated Dr. Downing, who had faked his death in the bombing to escape with the samples. Dr. Miller had actually masterminded the India outbreak as a means of advertising both the T virus and T vaccine, and was radicalized to carry out further attacks in the United States. Following Dr. Downing's arrest, WP Corporation collapsed and was purchased by Tricell through Westgear's acquisitions. In 2006, around a year after the WP Corporation's collapse, I found myself involved in a major incident at the White House. An unknown individual had hacked into confidential computer files, which led to an investigation that I was a part of. President Graham, his chief of staff, Ryan, and his defense secretary, Wilson oversaw the investigation, which included 4 specially selected federal agents, Patrick, Jason, Shinmei, and myself. However, I was running late due to a recent terrorist incident in Pittsburgh, so the initial meeting took place without me. As I arrived at the White House, chaos erupted as the power went out, and the Secret Service sprang into action, ready to evacuate the president if necessary. It soon became clear that the suspected mole from the previous night was still in the White House, and the agents began searching for them. During the search, I encountered and killed a mysteriously zombified White House press secretary Spacer, saving my colleague, Patrick. After warning President Graham of the situation, we decided to head to the bunker instead of evacuating to the beast. While Patrick went down to the bunker with the Secret Service for Graham's protection, Shinmei, Jason, and I searched the White House for zombies. The virus had spread quickly, infecting dozens of staff members, but we were eventually able to clear the White House of all zombies. President Graham ultimately decided to cover up the incident, and the victims were declared to have gone on leave. Later on, I was surprised to see Claire and was confided in about her discovery of a biohazard in Penamston. This led to a top-secret operation to infiltrate a bio-research facility in Shanghai. Jason, Shinmei, and I were chosen for the mission and flown to Guam, where we boarded a Virginia-class submarine modified for sonar stealth and equipped with a modified Advanced Seal Delivery System, ASDS, midget submarine. During the trip, Jason shared his experiences during the Penamston Civil War, including his view that the bombing of Raccoon City was necessary to save the United States. I disagreed, still bitter about the Army's cowardly withdrawal from Raccoon City. Suddenly, the submarine was rocked, and we found that the bridge crew had been killed. While I headed to the engineering section, Jason met up with Shinmei en route to the ASDS. I arrived at the engineering section to find that the engineers had also been killed, and mutant rats had burrowed into their bodies. I decided to seal them behind a hatch instead of using firearms due to the danger of using them on board a submarine. When a self-destruct system was triggered, I made my way to the ASDS, electrocuting another swarm of rats on the way. Shinmei put a gun to my head when I arrived, but Jason ordered her to stand down. We escaped with me as their prisoner, bound for Shanghai as the submarine exploded behind us. I arrived in Shanghai with Shinmei and Jason on the ASDS, ready to carry out our mission. However, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off about the two of them. I suspected that they were traitors working for the Chinese government, but when Jason told me that he was actually working to expose a conspiracy within the government, I didn't believe him. Our disagreement quickly escalated into a violent altercation, with both of us reaching for our guns. In the end, I emerged victorious, and Jason was left with a gunshot wound to the chest. Unfortunately, Shinmei had managed to escape during the fight. I was able to track Shinmei to her family's mansion outside of Shanghai, where I took her brother, Hao Ran, hostage and demanded answers from Shinmei. She revealed that she was handling radio communications between Wilson and the soldiers in Panamston, but was not allowed to respond to the Mad Dog's request for evacuation, even when they reported picking up her brother, Junsi. When they arrived at the base, Shinmei found Junsi alive but suffering from cannibal disease. She had been working with Jason to expose Wilson's conspiracy to deploy bioweapons in Panamston, but I was skeptical of Jason's motives. Shinmei showed me the remains of her brother, and I began to believe her. She explained that the Mad Dogs had filed false reports about the incident, and that only she and Jason were willing to investigate Wilson while the others were discharged. Shinmei used her family connections to have Junsi smuggled out of China to escape euthanasia. After 6 years of investigating, Shinmei and Jason had finally found a breakthrough. A computer chip planted on Junsi was discovered, which had been recording biometric data on behalf of a bioorganic weapon manufacturer involved in the Panamston incident. However, our conversation was cut short when the mansion was suddenly destroyed in a bomb blast. I managed to drag Shinmei out before the mansion collapsed, but her brother, grandfather, and Hao Ran were killed. Shinmei and I were the only ones left standing, but we still had the computer chip with us. Shinmei begged me to hand it over so that the conspiracy could be exposed, but I was hesitant to destroy the United States' reputation. Instead, I was more concerned about what had caused the explosion. I deduced that Jason was a mutant and was planning to conduct acts of terror in revenge for his experiences in Panamston, rather than seeking justice. It was a sad realization, but I knew that I had to stop him before it was too late. I returned to the United States with Shinmei, determined to capture Jason and put an end to the madness. I contacted Patrick and informed him of our discovery, and we made our way to a secret research facility beneath Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland where President Graham was holding a press conference. But when we arrived, we found that Jason had stopped taking his inhibitor medication, and he was mutating into a massive humanoid mutant. Wilson, who was with us, was seriously injured and infected after being crushed against a capsule and bitten in the neck by Jason. The facility's supercomputer detected a biohazard and began disposing of tanks containing unconscious super soldiers into a vat of highly corrosive acid where they were killed one by one. Shinmei tried to reason with Jason, but he had lost control of his violent impulses and killed her instead of using the chip. He planned to emerge on the surface and massacre everyone on live TV. Meanwhile, Claire, who had been investigating the Mad Dog squad, was in danger from the acid that had reached her floor. I armed myself with a bazooka, ready to take down Jason if necessary. But my attempt failed, and Jason countered, almost knocking me into the acid. I managed to destroy his right arm with an anti-material rifle, but he grabbed me by the neck instead of killing me. He spared me in favor of his plans. To save the president, I pulled a lever that sent our section falling into the acid, and we barely escaped by grabbing onto a cable. As the acid receded, I found Jason still alive, but dissolving while embedded onto a piece of metal. He warned me of the spread of true fear before dissolving completely. Back on the surface, I saw President Graham off on Air Force One before finding Claire outside the White House. She asked me to hand over the chip, but I refused because of what Jason had said about his willingness to spread terror. Claire was disappointed in my decision and commented that the outfit didn't suit me before leaving. In the years that followed, Westgear built up a criminal empire for himself with Trisol's resources, which eventually fragmented upon his death at the hands of the BSAA in 2009. In 2010, I met Chris Redfield for the first time at one of the TerraSave reunions, thanks to Claire's presentation. We became friends and helped break the barrier between the BSAA and the United States government. In February 2011, I received orders to investigate allegations that rebel forces in the Eastern Slav Republic Civil War were using bioweapons. I was on vacation at the time, but I was immediately summoned to meet with a CIA agent known as Scarecrow. My mission was to gather any information I could to aid in the investigation. However, the situation quickly changed after I arrived in Holograd. The government ordered its agents to pull out of the country, but I decided to ignore those orders and continue my investigation. I managed to meet with Scarecrow, but he died soon after from wounds inflicted by lickers. The only word he managed to utter before passing away was beekeeper. After Scarecrow's death, I was captured by Ivan Jadanovich, the rebel leader who was using a dominant species plaga to control parasitized lickers. I woke up tied up in a basement, guarded by two rebels named Alexander Kosachenko and JD. They were suspicious of why an American would be sent to their area, and attempted to interrogate me. However, their interrogation was interrupted when the Eastern Slav Army conducted a search of the house. We managed to escape the basement and fled through tunnels to evade the army. During our escape, I noticed Jadanovich coughing and suspected that he was deteriorating due to bioweaponry. Kosachenko received a promotion to leadership from Jadanovich, who ordered his own execution to prevent turning into a monster. I managed to escape the tunnels with JD and we headed to a church that the rebels were using as a base. Along the way, we encountered a number of Ganado's former rebel leaders whose minds had been taken over by the parasite. When we arrived at the church, JD accused me of being responsible for what had happened to the people of the town. I explained to him about the plaga and the harsh reality that those infected could never be human again. Buddy entered the church and confirmed my story, and JD allowed me to leave. Before I could depart, JD told me about Buddy's tragic past. The government soldiers had attacked the school where Buddy worked with his fiancée, Irina, thinking it was supporting the rebels. Irina and the school children were killed in the attack, causing Buddy to join the resistance. JD pleaded with me to save Buddy and get to the plaga before he did. He gave me my machine gun and told me that Buddy was heading to the central marketplace where the Council of Elders had left the plaga for the rebels. I silently took my gun back and headed to the marketplace to continue my mission. I arrived at the marketplace to find that the case holding the plaga was empty. I heard a voice and quickly turned to attack, but the person easily evaded my attacks and aimed a grappling gun at me. It wasn't until then that I realized it was Ada Wong. I asked her what she was doing in the Eastern Slav Republic and if she was responsible for releasing the plaga, but she found the notion laughable. She flirted with me briefly before making her escape, warning me that the town would be purged soon. When I returned to the church, I found most of the inhabitants dead, and JD told me that he had killed them. Buddy blamed me for what happened, but JD said I wasn't their enemy. JD succumbed to the plaga and attacked Buddy, but I managed to kill him. I asked Buddy to hand over the plaga, but he refused. The government began bombing the area, causing the church to collapse. Buddy escaped, and I pursued him. I made my way to the presidential building, which had been devastated by the lickers, leaving hundreds of dead soldiers. I encountered two lickers and managed to kill one and cause the other to fall to its demise after charging through a door which led to a massive elevator shaft. I then descended into a bioorganic weapon manufacturing facility and encountered Ada Wong once again. She informed me that they were mass-producing control plagas. We were quickly surrounded by guards and confronted by Svetlana Belikova, the president of the Eastern Slav Republic. Wong deactivated the lights to make her escape, and I used the confusion to shoot at some of Belikova's guards, prompting them to begin firing out of panic and hitting each other indiscriminately. I managed to take Belikova hostage, but she identified herself as the president of the republic before displaying her combat skills to throw me off. A fight broke out between me and Belikova's guards, which was soon interrupted by Buddy and a horde of lickers. Belikova released her own bioorganic weapons, two advanced tyrants. This initiated a biohazard alert, and the facility began preparations for incineration. Buddy and I managed to escape as the two tyrants caused the access elevator to fall. A third tyrant had followed Buddy and me, and we had no choice but to fight it. Buddy came up with a plan to lure the tyrant to a tanker truck filled with explosives, and I shot it with incendiary rounds. The plan worked, and the creature's power limiter was destroyed. But as a result, its power increased, and it became even more dangerous. Buddy drove a tank at the tyrant, and I manned the turret, trying to shoot it in the head. But the creature was too fast, and it kept evading my shots. Then Buddy summoned a liquor to cover the tyrant's face, and I took advantage of the situation to blow its head off. We thought we were safe, but the earlier two tyrants soon emerged from the presidential palace. I tried to help Buddy escape, but we couldn't outrun them. All I had left was my combat knife. I was ready to fight to the death, but then an American plane killed the creatures before they could reach us. It was at that moment that I realized the US government had been watching me the whole time. Watching a joint American-Russian task force invade the capital, Buddy asked me if I knew this would happen. I told him that if I did, I would have remained on vacation. Buddy asked me to kill him, as he didn't want to turn into a monster. But I refused. Instead, I took his gun and told him that he owed it to the people who died alongside him to keep living. Then I shot him in the spinal cord, severing the Plagas link to him. After that, I returned to my vacation, but I couldn't escape the reality of what had happened. Hunnigan informed me that Belikova had resigned from her position, and I knew that it was because of the chaos that had occurred. I left my apartment, unsure of what the future held. I met with President Benford at Ivy University in Tall Oaks on Saturday 29th of June 2013. He informed me of his new policy for the War on Terror, which involved revealing the truth about America's involvement in Raccoon City. Although this decision would harm American prestige and defense, the president believed it to be necessary for long-term relations. However, that same evening, President Benford was infected with a newly engineered virus, the chrysalid virus, in an apparent terrorist attack just before his speech was due. I had to reluctantly kill him when he tried to kill a Secret Service agent, Helena Harper. Following Harper's advice, I escaped the city and headed to the Tall Oaks Cathedral. There, she led me to a limestone cavern where a bioweapons research facility was based. She revealed to me that her sister had been abducted on the orders of National Security Advisor Derek Simmons, who was planning to assassinate President Benford. Simmons's organization, the family, had taken it upon itself to research bioweapons on behalf of the United States to ensure America's dominance in a hypothetical bioweapons gap. With Simmons controlling the countermeasures for the outbreak, the city of 77,000 was bombed on Sunday morning, wiping away any evidence implicating the family and denying the release of footage useful as combat data. Neo Umbrella claimed responsibility for the attack and began another one in the Chinese city of Lanxiang. After the bombing, Harper and I had to go underground and had Hunnigan misreport us as deceased following Simmons' declaration of us as suspects in the attack. We then booked a flight to China to take our investigation to Simmons. However, complications arose when a Lapotica chrysalid hatched in the plane, infecting all the passengers with the C virus. Harper and I were forced to fight our way through the zombie-infested plane, and it crashed close by where Jake Muller and Sherry Birkin were. When the four of us met, I asked Sherry what she was doing there, and she replied that she was on protective detail. Sherry returned the same question to me, and I responded that Harper and I were trying to track down Simmons, the man behind all of the chaos. During our argument, Ustinak appeared on the destroyed plane, and the four of us had to team up to defeat the creature. After a heated battle, Harper and I were separated from Jake and Sherry when an electrical tower fell on Ustinak. Sherry yelled to me that she and Jake were meeting Simmons at the Kunlong building. Before I could tell her what to do, the tower exploded. As Harper wondered if we would be all right, I told her that we would be as long as Jake was as good as he claimed to be. While making our way to Kuchang, Harper and I had to search through a whole market for 3 keys to unlock a door, all while being chased by a rascalpange. We managed to kill it by forcing it into a grinder. When I found Wong with Harper, we chased her into a building while avoiding traps along the way. We made it to a room just in time to see Chris Redfield and Piers Nivens cornering her, thinking she was responsible for the outbreaks and the deaths of Chris' men. Chris had his rifle aimed, ready to kill her, but I knocked it out of his hands to prevent him from doing so. We had a brief struggle, and it ended with the two of us pointing our guns at each other. I told Chris to put his gun down, saying that she was a key witness and that we needed her, but he refused, insisting that she was responsible for the global bioterrorist attacks. I disagreed and told him that it was Simmons who was truly responsible. Chris yelled at me, saying that he lost all of his men because of Wong, but I reminded him that I lost over 70,000 people, including the president, because of Simmons. Eventually, Wong managed to escape with a flash bomb, and Chris pursued her with no intention of harming her after my words. Harper and I left to find Simmons. We reached the Kun Wong building, and I told Harper that we should go after Simmons and let Chris follow Wong. When we got inside, we found Simmons and his henchmen from the family, and Sherry and Jake joined us shortly afterwards. Simmons admitted to being involved in the terrorist attacks but blamed me for the president's death. The family then fired on us, causing us to take cover. I told Sherry and Jake to escape with a chip containing information that could stop the C virus while Harper and I stayed behind to fight Simmons. We opened fire on the family and then jumped onto a nearby train to pursue Simmons, who was shot with a C virus dart by a Javo. Simmons stumbled onto a passing train, and Harper and I pursued him, jumping onto the train after him. We found him at the front of the train, where he tried to place blame on Wong and rationalize his actions. Harper and I dismissed his remarks, and he eventually mutated into a larger canine-like creature of bone and muscle tissue due to the enhanced C virus. Harper prepared to take a final shot at him, and we fought him throughout the train cars, but he showed no signs of stopping and only taunted Harper with her sister's death. He was even strong enough to knock another series of oncoming train cars off of the railing. Simmons prepared to ram the train we were on head-on, but we managed to trip him up as we opened fire, causing the train to ram him and flip him back on top of the train. His body briefly reverted to his human form, but he recovered quickly and started to mutate again. He declared that we had no idea what would happen if he were to die, but I retorted that the world would be better off without him. Enraged, Simmons used his brute strength to dislodge a piece of the train's roof and sent it flying towards Harper and me. I managed to slide and shoot the debris to knock it off course, giving Harper an opening just as it passed overhead. She fired one bullet directly into the mutated Simmons' head, and he fell off the edge of the train and onto the tracks. The train ran over him, and the cars became dislodged from the rails, forcing Harper and me to leap off and into the water nearby. We pulled ourselves ashore just outside of Tat Chi, exhausted and alive. We briefly overlooked the wreckage caused on the bridge railroad before walking up off of the dock, watching as civilians were being escorted to safety by the BSAA. Harper asked me if the ordeal was finally over, to which I replied, "Yeah. It's over." Before we could relax, Hunnigan suddenly contacted us to inform us that Sherry and Jake had been abducted. Harper realized that the files that Sherry gave us had something to do with it, and as we looked over the files, she pointed out to me how the key to stopping the C virus actually lies in Jake Muller. As I tried to get in contact with someone in the BSAA to help rescue them, Harper spotted an object in the sky just above. With Chris patched through, I informed him of our location, only to have Chris urgently yell for us to leave the area. The object overhead that Harper spotted was a missile that released the C virus in a blue fog over Tat Chi, infecting countless people. I told Chris to find Sherry and Jake and rescue them, and Harper overheard as Chris in turn told me that Wong was dead. Concerned, Harper asked me if I was alright, but I only distantly mentioned finding survivors and escaping the city. With the help of some BSAA operators, Harper and I managed to avoid the blue fog and escape into a truck with one of the soldiers. The soldier drove us through the fog to the edge of the danger zone, directing us to the quad tower where evacuees were being taken. Chaos reminiscent of tall oaks was everywhere as a stray gas tanker knocked us both out briefly. As we came to, infected citizens began to surround us until Wong suddenly appeared in a helicopter, providing us with cover fire to make our escape. We managed to find our way to a bridge overrun with zombies that would lead directly to the quad tower. However, a plane set inside a building dislodged itself, starting a series of explosions that destroyed the bridge. Harper and I were forced to run, making our way to a BSAA helicopter to escape, only to find the pilot was injured. I took the controls of the failing helicopter, managing to keep it suspended enough to crash through the side of the quad tower. Barely escaping the crash, Harper and I proceeded deeper into the tower. As we entered, we were shocked to find Simmons waiting for us, greatly angered and mutated into a new, gigantic form as he witnessed Wong circling overhead in her helicopter. With the help of Wong and the BSAA soldier we met back at the danger zone, we managed to bring Simmons down once again. Wong retreated to the roof with her helicopter and Harper hoped the elevator was still operational. Noticing my hesitation, she asked me what was wrong, but I insisted it was nothing. On the elevator ride up, Harper finally spoke up about Wong, pointing out my obvious feelings for her. Before I could respond, the elevator was blown off course by an explosion, forcing us to make a wild leap on top of the neighboring elevator. Together, we climbed the support cable only to witness Wong fighting with Simmons on top of a nearby connecting hallway between two of the towers. With Wong evading to another section of the tower, Harper and I found the opportunity to fire on Simmons from afar until the platform we stopped on began to fall, forcing us to jump back onto the cable. Simmons' attention shifted to us as we climbed further. Harper tried to call out for Wong's help as she returned the favor, trying to slow Simmons down with gunfire. It was not long before Simmons went after Wong again, giving us the chance to find even ground once more until I found a way over to help Wong as she was knocked out by Simmons. From afar, Harper could do nothing but provide cover fire for the two while fending off whatever zombie shambled her way. Though Harper was helpless as Simmons managed to knock me to the edge of the platform, leaving me dangling until Wong came to my rescue. With Simmons dispatched, Wong bid me a final farewell before departing, though Harper urged me over our comms to go after her. I refused, stating that Harper and I were sticking together. Reaching the roof, we discovered Simmons had survived our last encounter, mutated further as he absorbed the bodies of the infected to power himself. Though Simmons briefly blocked our exit, we managed to injure him enough to the point he was defenseless as surrounding undead swarmed and began to feed on him. We took note of the helicopter Wong had left for us and rushed to it, though Simmons, newly mutated into a massive amalgamation of different insects, tried to stop us once more. Noting how Simmons used the bodies of infected to regenerate, we used a loosened lightning rod to impale a zombie as Simmons took it in to regenerate its damaged head. The rod attracted the lightning from the ongoing storm, causing the electrified creature to crash through the floor. We reached the helicopter, but the injured and fully mutated Simmons attempted to stop us. We managed to get our hands on a rocket launcher that Wong left behind, and we used it to take out Simmons. The blast knocked him back and sent him plummeting into the tower. As he fell, his body mutated back into his human form and he was impaled on an obelisk. It was a gruesome sight. Harper was thrilled to have finally gotten revenge for her sister, but I was just focused on getting to the helicopter. We found a compact that Wong had left behind, and inside was a small data disk with evidence that proved Simmons was behind the bioterrorist attacks. It was the key to proving my innocence, and Harper didn't need it. Before we could make our escape, Hunnigan called to inform us that a way to stop the C-virus had been found. We barely made it out before the tower collapsed around us. Some time later, Harper visited her sister's grave with me, Hunnigan, and some other agents. She was ready to take responsibility for her actions, but instead of arresting her, I gave her back her gun. It turned out that the evidence showed she wasn't responsible for Simmons' crimes, and President Benford would have done the same thing. We all went to join the rest of the team, but before Harper left, she gave me Wong's compact back so I could return it to her next time we crossed paths. It was a bittersweet moment, but at least we were able to put this behind us. Sometime later, I found myself in a mission against the bioorganic weapons in Washington, D.C. with my squad. Unfortunately, the mission went horribly wrong due to a whistleblower. I was the only one who survived the ordeal and I had to go throughout the morgue containing my fallen comrades. One of them turned into a zombie, and I had to kill him. But that only woke up the rest of them, forcing me to kill them too. This left me emotionally scarred, and I spent my vacation drinking my days away in a bar, similar to Chris who lost his team in Adonia. During my vacation, I was approached by Chris Redfield and Rebecca Chambers, aiming to consult me about the recent bioorganic weapon attacks in the U.S. and Mexico by Glenn Arias. The viral strain he was using allowed him to control the BOWS, and it was engineered with the aid of a plaga sample provided by Los Iluminados. At first, I was reluctant to help them and asked when all of the fighting against the bioorganic weapons would even end. But it was only after Rebecca's kidnapping that I agreed to team up with Chris and find the target of Arias' next attack. Together with the Silver Dagger team, we then went to New York where Arias was planning a mass attack through the use of tankers carrying the airborne trigger for the virus. It is there that the team is provided with transportation to help with their mission, a Hummer that Chris took, and a Ducati motorcycle which I took. After destroying the first fuel truck, Chris, Damien, and I were attacked by infected dogs that swiftly decapitated Damien before turning their attention to Chris. I revved my bike loudly to attract the dogs before speeding off with them in pursuit, allowing Chris to continue destroying the virus-filled tanker trucks. Leading the dogs onto the expressway, I easily dispatched the 2 infected dogs and rushed to Arias's headquarters to help Chris. Arriving in time to help Chris kill off the remaining zombies of the first wave, we were confronted with even more zombies. We managed to hold them back until Chris decided that time was running out for Rebecca, and I told him to go ahead to save her while I stayed behind to kill the zombies. After Arias mutated into a powerful creature, I arrived just in time at the rooftop after killing all the zombies to save Chris from being squeezed to death by Arias, slamming my bike into Arias's legs. I then dodged Arias's attacks and even managed to kick him in his head. When Arias was grabbing onto the helicopter of Silver Dagger, I rode my bike at high speed and jumped off the bike at the last minute to allow the bike to slam into Arias. I then shot the bike, causing it to explode and severely injuring Arias before he was killed by Chris. After the defeat of Arias, I looked back upon my life and wondered how long we have to continue fighting bioorganic weapons. Chris jokingly replied with a prior comment of mine about never making plans that far ahead. A year after the New York bioterrorist attack, I was tasked with rescuing Dr. Antonio Taylor from bioterrorist kidnappers when my efforts were thwarted by a mysterious woman. Thus, I once again teamed up with Chris Redfield and my longtime partner, Jill Valentine, who had been investigating a series of mysterious infections affecting Alcatraz tourists, with assistance from Rebecca Chambers and Claire.